Good evening, listeners, and welcome to the show. This is Priscilla Phantom, and I will endeavour to uncover and explain all of the mysteries of this strange isle, including the mysteries surrounding my family, especially my mother. Well, I have asked my Aunt Carol if she would like to be interviewed, but the memory is still too painful for her, and she said she didn't think she had anything to add that me and Charlie hadn't already covered. However, if you've been listening to the show, I'm sure you have heard of the name Winton by now. The last episode I spoke with Letitia, a rather impromptu interview, but Letitia suggested that I speak to her mother to learn a bit more about my own. I have been in contact with Mrs. Winton. She is worried about her eldest daughter, Letitia, but there is no proof that Letitia has committed any crimes as of yet. She said she needed to protect her youngest too from whatever has been happening, and has declined an interview. She has, however, written a letter into the station. Thank you, Mrs. Winton. Let's see if you can put some of my fears to rest. Dear Priscilla, your mother and I were not close, at least not to begin with. I knew her in passing. She worked as a freelance journalist. She actually interviewed my husband, Elliot, when he got the opportunity to do his first installation at the Underwood Gallery. Apparently she had a special interest. As I'm sure you know, she was good friends with Mary Underwood, the wife of Patrick Underwood, who founded the gallery. I used to see your mother in the library all the time. I used to go there with my 3 children. The thing is, I can't really remember why. I know that children should be encouraged to read and that it can help boost their vocabulary and their reasoning skills and all of that important stuff. But the truth is, if you're a mother to 3 children, it's tiring. If none of them particularly want to go to the library, it's difficult to push them into it. Eddie was just a baby. I had to nurse him and look after 2 energetic children running about. None of them ended up reading anything, and I was always far too busy trying to keep Letty and Tommy from throwing books at each other to read to little Eddie. You can imagine my worry when I listened to your first episode and heard about a man with the same last name as me. You mentioned the house at the end of the road that I lived in. I was about the right age to have been born when I cut my hours down at work for no particular reason. Victor Winton. It's a nice name. A name I might have chosen to give to my child. I'm not saying I'm certain he's real or that he's my son, but Priscilla, Anyway, your mother. Your mother used to go to the library to do research. I later learned about her love for historical articles. She said she used to write them for the local paper and historical society magazines quite a lot. She seemed nice, but like I said, we were not close. She was just a friendly face, and I hope I was that to her as well. That was until we both learned the true nature of this world. It was December, and I was walking back from work when I saw it. At the time, I worked at the art supply shop in the middle of town. It's closed now, but it used to be called Masterpiece. It's where I met my husband, Elliot, in fact. Being an artist, he used to come in for paint and canvas quite often, and we got talking. Fast forward 11 years, and I was still working in the same shop, and he was still a struggling artist. But we had 3 children to feed. I was walking back home, and it was early evening, but it was in the winter, so the streets were dark and gloomy, and a thick mist had swept in from the sea. I made my way down the high street. As you know, the Augustine house sits at the end of the street where I live. They put a few more street lamps there now, but at the time it was so badly lit. As I wandered past, I thought about what might be lurking in the shadows. I told myself I was being silly. However, I was still thankful for the light from the house windows, until I realised which house the light was coming from. Now, I'm not particularly religious. My mother was. She used to take me to Sunday school when I was a child. Ephraim Sage had just become the Reverend as a young man of just 21. He was a good man. He used to teach us all about God and Satan, but he also told us that we should do what was right, not to be praised for it, or because we expect some eternal reward, but because it was the right thing to do. But every so often, he used to warn us to trust our gut, and when it came to places of evil. I once confided in him that I felt uncomfortable around the Augustine house. He told me I was very perceptive, that the Augustine house was a place of monsters, and that I should stay away. As a child, I was fascinated with the house, but careful and cautious. So when I saw that the lights were on in this old, abandoned house, a place of evil, as Reverend Sage used to say, I instinctively knew something was wrong. I wished the lights would go off and that I could pretend that I had never seen them. I wish I could keep walking. My house was only a couple of dozen yards away. I could go and see my children and live my life, happy and safe and ignorant. And then the lights did just what I wished they would do. They flickered off. I didn't feel relieved. However, I think I might have been able to walk home if I didn't hear that noise. A loud thump, thump, thump. I looked up to see a face. At that point, I couldn't make out who it was, but they were in the house, pounding their fists against the window, and then they were dragged away. A scream rose up, muffled by the glass that stood between us. I didn't know what to do. I could call the police, but who knows how long that would take. I could run in like an idiot with no plan and get myself killed. Or I could knock on doors, screaming about a woman trapped in the library with a monster, and get myself sectioned. All options seemed like bad options. But I had to do something. And I had to do it now, or whoever that was would die. So I nudged open the splintered wood of the front door. I gritted my teeth at how loud the hinges squealed. When the door stood open, just wide enough for me. I slipped into the house, and as I did, a chill ran up my spine. Inside, it was dark, darker than it should have been, and silent, except from the tap, tap, tap of my shoes on the tiles beneath me. The cold air curled around me, like fingers, but I kept going. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have turned round and left. Maybe your mother would have made it out alive. Maybe my children would have been safe from those creatures. Maybe. 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 That's it, isn't it? Maybe it would have happened differently. Maybe it would have been better. Maybe it would have been worse. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. Maybe if he had been going slower, or he had been paying more attention, the road had been gritted better. If his tyres were in better condition, the bend of the road had been better signposted. Who knows? Maybe it would have happened anyway. Maybe this is just what was supposed to happen. I'm not sure I believe in fate. But if I do, I think fate nudged me into that house. I held my breath and kept going, wandering forward towards an old staircase that I wouldn't trust not to fall apart under my weight. In a small corner, there was an old wooden frame, a damp and rotting thing. It used to be a sofa by the looks of it, but there were no cushions. A torn piece of fabric remained, but it too was soaked through and brown with mould. The room seemed to bend to the right, but the lady in the window stood in the room to the left. I crept over, my footsteps still ringing horribly loud in such a quiet place. The door on the left stood open, and I managed to make my way through without pushing the door open more. This room must have been beautiful in its day. In the centre of a room sat a brass globe, and the walls were lined with books, every shelf crammed with books, old and damaged, with broken spines, covered in mould, soggy or with ripped pages sticking out at angles. Piles of books were stacked around the room, and a staircase wound up to a balcony which ran around the room. Most of the shelves up there looked empty. I suppose whoever had lived here never had time to organise the shelves of the books stacked up down here. In the corner of the room sat a chair. It was fairly well intact, but it seemed to be partly covered with something black, which oozed down the leg of the chair. Above it stood a large floor lamp, and in the centre of the chair's seat sat a single book. It was old, but the cover was green, laden with gold writing. It seemed to be in good condition. It wasn't yet covered with whatever that was on the chair. I bent down and picked it up. As I did, the lamp above me flickered into life for a split second, before dying once more. From somewhere to my right, I heard something. A laugh, maybe? It was deep and humorless. The book fell out of my hand and landed on the floor with a thud. I ducked behind a pile of books, holding my breath and quietly shuffling back, away from the spot that I had just been standing. Something emerged from the shadows. I don't think I know how to describe these things. The more I see them or think about them, the more I realise I don't really understand what it is that I am seeing. This thing. It was tall and spindly. Its skin was pale and patchy, and where the skin was flaking off, that black ooze seemed to be bubbling out. It dropped onto all fours and inspected the spot where I had been. It looked up at me and into me, and for a moment I saw its eyes. They were dark. No, not dark. Endless. Like a void or a dead star. The ones that collapse in on themselves and begin consuming everything around them. The planets, the debris, the air, every molecule, even time itself. It grinned at me. Maybe it wasn't at me. Maybe it just grinned like that all the time. A showman's grin, wide and artificial, but with sharp, brown teeth set into a monstrous face. It saw me. It must have done. I could hear it crawling towards me, over the thrumming of my beating heart, so loud and so fast. Why wouldn't it just attack? If it knew I was here. Maybe it didn't see me. Or, I don't know. I guess, if I believe in fate, then maybe she was smiling on me after all. Because at this point, something fell down from the balcony. A book. No, it didn't fall. It arced across the room and smashed straight through the window. Nothing just falls with a trajectory like that. It was thrown, and that thing, whatever it was, went chasing after it. I glanced up, and I saw her on the balcony, crouched down, peering at me through the wooden railings, with an index finger pressed up against her lips. It was Charlotte Phantom. Screw fate. It was her. Your mother saved me. I watched as she made her way over to the staircase and crept down the stairs, carefully placing each foot so the stair creaked as little as possible. As she came towards me, I held my hand out and she held it. We couldn't go out the front door because that creature, whatever it was outside the window. I could see its shadow as it loomed in the darkness, still searching the grounds for us. It picked something up. Its long finger. The book. I think it understood our ruse, but I wasn't about to stand around and find out. I gestured to the next room, situated at the back of the house, and Charlotte nodded as we wandered through the doorway. I think it used to be the kitchen. There was an old stove and a fireplace. The cupboards on the walls had been built out of some kind of dark wood, but now they were splintered and rotten. Green moss was growing on the countertops, and the walls were just splattered with that black fluid. The darkness in the corners whispered to itself. Thankfully, on the outer wall stood a door. I grabbed the handle and pressed it down and swung the door towards me. It stopped. Locked. I pulled it harder, and the rotten frame looked like it was starting to break. "Let me try," your mother whispered. I nodded, and she stepped forward, and with one sharp tug, the frame splintered and the door swung open. We ran. We didn't stop until we both had made it through the little gate in the fence, which backed onto the garages. The monster had heard us. We saw it. It came right up to the fence. I tried to run, but your mother was still holding my hand, and she didn't run. She just watched it. And I realised it was bound to that place. I was right. It was a place of evil. It housed evil. Your mother saved me that night. She saved me a dozen times afterwards too. Neither of us could just go back to our lives after that. We had to do something. Make things better. Safer. We failed. Your mother and I, we learned about another monster. The illusion. That's what we called him. Charlotte became obsessed with trapping him. I don't know why. He was not worse than the other monsters. But he, in particular, seemed to upset her. I think she might have tried to trap him. She never told me she was planning anything, but I believe that's why she's seen things. The illusion. He invades your mind, feeds your delusions. Your mother is not well, nor has she been in a long time. But I think it's him, the illusion. He's doing this to her. I'm sorry about your mother. I really am. But what happened to her? It was a wake-up call for me. I couldn't go around playing hero with these cosmic forces. I couldn't afford to. I had children of my own to keep safe. And I thought I was doing just that. I thought I was keeping them safe. And then I heard about your show. I listened to your very first episode from Victor Winton, a boy who bared my last name, who was about the right age to have been born around a year after Elliot and I had gotten married, and who I don't remember. Not at all. It scared me, Priscilla. I tried to ignore it. It must have been a mistake or a coincidence. Or was it just somebody playing a joke? Whatever lie I told myself, I blocked it out. These gods, these monsters, these things, they couldn't be coming from my family. No, not after so long. I had left them alone for years. It wouldn't be fair. But these creatures, they don't care about fair, do they, Priscilla? Letitia hasn't been right in a while. I don't know if I can fix her, but I have to try. And even if I can't, I will make these things pay. I don't believe this. How can I? My mother, she's not, was not, some kind of monster hunter. She can't be. Monsters don't exist. They don't exist. They don't exist. They can't. Mrs. Winton, I thank you for writing this letter. I can't believe it. I don't know what to make of this anymore. And I think this letter is it for today. Harvey and I went to investigate the Augustine house, but there is now police tape around the entrance and a security guard on watch. Seems they are not taking any chances that this is real. I do not know how to investigate this further. It seems we only have Penelope Winton's account. I thought about talking to Mother, but well, she is in no state to be answering questions. Listeners, make of this what you will, and sleep well.
The voice of Priscilla Phantom was Lyndsey Evans. The Phantom Myth was written, edited and produced by Sasha K. Williams. Thank you for listening to our show. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember kids, collective punishment is a war crime and playing with bioengineered viruses is a safety hazard. I'm not sure what you should do with this information. Just seems like something you should know. Have a relaxing day.